Learning C# is much easier if you know the steps to get to your destination. Just like driving to a far-off city is easier if you know what turns to take. Even better is if you have something helping you navigate. In this video, I'm going to help you navigate to your goal, whether that is to become a C# developer, to become a better C# developer, or to figure out what to do after you have learned C#. I'm going to give you my best advice for becoming a successful C# developer in today's marketplace. But I'm also going to be straight with you. It's really easy to lie to yourself about your path to becoming a developer. I'm going to call out those lies. I want to give you the best chance to succeed in 2024, and I can't wait to hear how you do. So let's start out by identifying your motivations. So why do you want to be a C# developer? This is important to understand and know, and you may have an idea, but may not be kind of concrete in your mind. So let's talk through kind of the big categories. Number one, you want to get a job or get better at your job or improve at your job, right? So getting a job is one reason why you might want to learn C#. But another is you just want to learn as a hobby. You know what? I just want to have fun and kind of goof off and learn something that maybe helps me out on the side projects or help me out in my regular job. Maybe you're an accountant, but you need a little application here or there, or you're a realtor and you want to have a little application on the side or something like that. That can be cool, or it can just be, I want to create something at home for fun to automate something. So learning as a hobby is also a valid reason to learn C#. Not that there's invalid reasons to learn C#, but the third kind of category is one people don't know about or don't think about. That's entertainment. You don't really care about learning C#. You're just kind of learning to be entertained. You're here to watch videos and kind of enjoy that process. And often this is the one that people think they're not doing. They think they're in category 1 or category 2, but they easily slip into category 3. And this is why I say don't lie to yourself. The worst person to lie to is yourself. Okay, this is the most damaging. So I want to talk through, what are these lies and why is this a lie? Because you may say, well, I'm here to get a job. All right, but are you really doing that, or are you doing this for entertainment? So let's talk about this and identify these common lies that can really set you back. Because if you're lying to yourself, then you could damage your process. You could slow yourself down. So I want to kind of get through them, get them out of the way, make sure that we clear them up so that you can move faster toward your goal. Because your goal probably is number 1 or number 2, get a job or learn as a hobby. Your goal isn't to just kill some time and enjoy yourself by watching, especially not a video. For me, I'm not entertaining. Watch an action movie. Much more fun than watching me on a screen. So what are the common lies that we tell ourselves as developers? And as developers, we've probably all told ourselves these lies at some point. And it's not like you're saying out loud or in your mind, this is what I'm doing, but this is, what goes on. Number 1, I'll learn by just watching videos. I'll learn C# by just watching videos. Well, I'm not an assassin because I watched John Wick. I'm not a gourmet baker because I watched the Great British Bake Off. So why do I become a developer by just watching videos of other people doing development? I need to actually put in the work of practicing in order to apply what I've seen. So if I watch this person bake a cake, I can't just go, I'm a baker now, I can bake that cake. I saw all the steps and sure, I know how to do it now. But do you? Have you actually mixed the ingredients? Have you actually tried it out? Because we've all seen those videos on the internet where a person sees this really cool, SpongeBob cake they're gonna make their kid for their birthday, and they show the results of that, and it's a horrific, awful mess that's entertaining because of how bad it is. And why is that? Because just watching the video didn't impart the skills that came along with what the person on the video was doing. It takes practice. It takes work over and over to get better at that craft. And that does not come from just watching videos. Now, You can definitely learn things by watching videos. Otherwise, I wouldn't do what I'm doing. Video is a great way to learn things, but it cannot be by just watching videos. That's not how you become a skilled expert at your craft. That's how you get introduced to topics. So, I'll learn by just watching videos is a lie we tell ourselves. Number 2, I'll set myself apart by playing with the technology for a few days. So a new technology comes out and you play it for a few days. Well, you can't add that to your resume. That's not a skill you have yet. Just playing with something isn't going to set you apart. You can't set yourself apart by doing what everybody else does. That's important. You cannot set yourself apart by doing what everybody else does. So just playing with new technology for a few days does not set you apart. You need to build on that. You need to spend more time on it. You need to continue to grow and expand your skills in that technology. You need to not just bounce around, but spend time there and really go deeper into the nuts and bolts of how to make that technology work in a number of different real world scenarios. So that's number 2. Number 3, I'll succeed even if I change focuses every few weeks or even every few months. So maybe you say, you know what? I want to learn MVC. And then the new Blazor comes out and you're like, nope, new Blazor. Okay. But then you see how Avalonia is doing some really cool stuff. You're like, Avalonia. Well, Uno is doing some really cool stuff too. So I learned Uno. Now Uno. Well, no, .NET MAUI. And if you keep changing focuses, you're not going to succeed. Would you want a doctor operate on you who's only learned the basics of surgery because they were in a different specialty 6 months ago? Well, no. And that's how businesses feel. Businesses feel the same way. They don't want you being the doctor of their technology when you've just kind of bounced into it in the last few weeks or few months. They want someone who is a skilled surgeon for their code. They want someone who can really make an impact and have that skill of having been there, done that. And that comes from sticking with something and spending a lot of time in it and going deeper into it. So when the new flashy things comes out, it can be great to touch it and understand it and see it and see what the hype is about and see how it works. But just switching from thing to thing to thing isn't going to set you apart. So you need to succeed by going deeper into a area or technology or focus rather than changing your focus every few weeks or even few months. Number 4, I'll advance even if I give up when things get hard. This is a really hard one because I see new developers doing this a lot. So this is a big red flag. This is something that when you catch yourself doing this, and again, we've all done these things. So when you catch yourself doing this, and that's a really common thing to do, I want you to stop yourself and say, wait, I'm not going to do that. And that is when things get hard, when there's a bug in your code and your code doesn't work. What do? My recommendation, don't go to the internet for help. Don't ask others for help yet. You may eventually, but the first thing you need to do is spend time working on that bug. Spend time trying it out, debugging it, figuring out why is this doing this, trying different things, trying to replicate the bug in a different area, trying to figure out what's going on that causes the bug. That is so important to do because you're not going to become a great developer if you can't push through these hard times. Every great developer has learned how to push through these times when they don't know. And asking for help is not the solution because even if you get the answer, which you might, that's not going to help you. It's the give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish. What you're saying is just give me a fish. I'll figure out how to fish next week. But in the meantime, just give me one. Well, that's not going to help you succeed at learning how to be a great fisherman. You need to learn how to catch fish. And to do that, you need to figure out how to get through these bugs. You need to figure out how to get through these times when you don't know, because your entire career is going to be full of getting stuck and pushing through. And the more you learn how to push through, the easier it will be the next time. Now, you're always going to have hard things to push through, and it's always going to be difficult. But what's going to happen is you'll find yourself getting through immediately on the easier things. The things that were hard before are now become easier. And it's the really hard things that you are pushing through now instead of the things you thought were really hard 6 months ago. So you need to learn how to make it on your own. I love helping people. I love seeing developers grow, and I want you to grow. But some of that is you have to figure out how to walk on your own. I can't just hold your hand as you grow up and be a good teacher, because I want you to be able to figure out how to succeed and be successful in the workplace without having to have me. So work through figuring out how to push through these hard times. My illustration here is you don't become a professional athlete if you take breaks when you start to sweat. What sets developers apart is how they persevere through hard times. Okay, so we've set some things up. We've got the idea of, what's your goal, and we've identified these lies that can really hold us back as developers. So let's talk about the preparation to taking this path to C#. So preparation step number 1, you want to identify the steps you're going to take. Now, in this case, I'm going to give you some of the steps you're going to take. I'm going to try and lay it out for you and give you the path. But you need to identify, for whatever you're learning, the steps you're going to take. So this can apply to the next steps after this video is, after you've completed all the work in this video. So you can keep using this same system. So identify a step you're going to take and then build a learning list. So if you know that you need to learn this technology and then this technology and then the third technology, well, what's the learning list for that? What are the things you need to do? So again, this video, I'm going to give you that learning list. But in trying to help you moving forward, that's the next step to prepare for taking a journey or for learning a technology or a new skill. Number 3, get ready to practice. And what I mean by that is make sure that you understand how to practice what you learn. Make sure that you put time in your schedule for practicing. Make sure that you are ready to mentally to not just blow through training and say, I've learned it because I've seen it. Remember line number 1? But instead to say, hey, no, I'm going to put some time in there to practice what I've learned in each one of those videos, each step in that learning list. I'm going to put time to practice because it's important. It's important to go from I've seen it to I am a skilled person in that area. So prepare to practice. Number 4, eliminate the distractions. So when you're preparing to learn something, and this is setting yourself up for 3 months, 6 months, 12 months of work, well, you need to figure out, how do I eliminate distractions? Maybe that's I'm going to learn in a certain area of the house. And that area is, not near the TV, is, a quieter place. It's more distraction free. I know that, I've never really had until recently an area where I can go that was totally distraction free when it comes to other people. But, find out what it's going to be. For me, one of the big things that really helped me was noise canceling headphones. That was a huge deal. That allowed me to cut out a lot of distractions. So figure out how to eliminate the distractions so you can focus on what you are learning. So set up the calendar, set up the, everything you need to to be set to learn. These are the steps that you're going to take beforehand to help you succeed and move faster, really, throughout the process of learning. Okay, so we're not quite to the path yet. We have one more thing to go through, and that is the process of learning. Okay, this is important. People often just say, well, I watch a video and I'm good, right? No. There's a process to learning that will help you succeed and help you move faster. Everything I'm doing is to help you succeed and help you move faster in this process. So let's talk about the process of learning. I want you to learn a new topic, okay? So you've got, one video, you're going to watch that one video and learn that new topic, right? Well, then you create 2 to 5 practice projects. And what you're going to do is you're not going to create an app. Don't try and create something that can do something in the real world. You're not creating, a to-do list every time or, something else that's practical. What you're creating is just enough code to try out what you learned. So if you learn an if statement, create a console app that just has an if statement and an else statement. That's their first practice project. And don't ask for the information, just put it in a variable. Is it a real application? Not in terms of being useful for anything but practice. But that's what you're doing, is practicing. So do that 2 to 5 times. Try out the different edge cases and make sure that you understand the topic you learn. Make sure that you can implement it without having to look back at the video every time. Figure it out. This is really important. And if you skip step number 2, you will almost certainly have problems. When I taught at a college, I would tell my students, listen, when you learn something from me, I want you to practice it. I want you to practice it at least twice in practice projects. But 2 to 5 times, I want you to practice. And here's what's going to happen. I said, I'm going to teach you new topics over and over again every week. And it was a once-a-week class. And I would tell them, I'd say, by about week 5, someone will come to me and say, I'm lost. And I will ask them, have you been creating 2 to 5 practice projects for everything you learned? And they will say, no. And I will say, you have to start over. Start from the beginning, catch up with 5 weeks worth of work of learning those 2 to 5 practice projects, because that's the way you succeed. You almost certainly will not succeed if you don't do the work. And this is the work step, is those practice projects. Now, I say repeat here because I want you to do this 5, 10, 15 times with little things. Learn a new topic, create 2 to 5 practice projects. Learn another new topic, create 2 to 5 practice projects over and over and over again. And then after you've done that a while, then I want you to create a small practice project. This is one where you actually create something that could be real world useful. But, and this is important, it needs to be tiny, very, very small. And at the end of the day, if it's not terribly useful, and if it's, something that may repeat itself, like you create a to-do app over and over and over again, that's okay. You don't need to have this be something you publish. This is still practice. But what this will do is it will allow you to put these pieces together with each other so you can see how they interact. So you've learned, let's say, 5 topics, if statements and for loops and for each, and, class instantiation and, something else. But you take those 5 things and figure out what would be a project where I could maybe, use those things and just try something. And it doesn't have to be an application that someone says, yes, I want to buy that application. It probably should not be. But it should be something where you just kind of put all that together and figure out how they interact with each other. It does not have to be perfect. It has to be practice. Now, so far, what you have not seen is the word production or real world, because So far, you have not used these things in a quote unquote real application, an application that is being used by customers or is going to be the application you want customers to use. So far, you have not done that, and that's important. Too often, people skip to step 5, implement in production. So what you do is you, number 1, learn a new topic, and then number 5, implement in production. The first time you learn to bake a cake, it's horrible. It doesn't work quite right. You forget something. You don't mix things quite right. You realize that, mixing the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients and how you put those together is important. Those kind of things, because you've never done it before. Well, the first time you bake a cake ever, it shouldn't be for the King of England, right? You should not put that in front of people that, are your customers. You shouldn't plan to put that in front of people that are going to judge how you did, because quite frankly, the first time you do just about anything, it's not that great. So you should not skip from step 1 to step 5, ever, 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 ever. And yes, I do not say that very lightly. I usually say, well, it depends. This isn't one of those things. I want you to never go from step 1 to step 5, because when you do, you almost certainly cause problems. The likelihood of causing problems is so much higher by skipping from step 1 to step 5. Create all the havoc, create all the problems, create all the bugs in step 2. And figure out how those, what you missed. Figure out why it doesn't work the way you expect it to. Figure out what the edge cases are in step 2. And then when you get to step 4, hopefully you've figured all those things out, but now you're figuring out what the bugs are integrating into a larger C# application. You're figuring out how does it actually work to put this into a quote unquote real application. And you figure out those bugs in step 4. So when you get to step 5, you have worked out all the bugs you possibly can. And you should be confident in what you have learned and confident that you know how to implement it. So you get to step 5, you're confident in what you're doing. Now, you can still create bugs in step 5. We all do. But the likelihood that those bugs are in there is much, much lower if you go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4 to step 5. Okay, so there's one more step in this process that's important, and that is step 6, evaluate your progress. Too often people look at the mountain they have yet to climb, and they say, man, there is so far to go. I'm just barely a junior developer. I've been learning forever, it feels like, and I feel like I'm still at the base of the mountain. They look at the top of the mountain where they see people who have, conquered C#, which, here's a tip, no one has. But they look at the people at the top of the mountain and go, man, I wish I was there, and it just feels overwhelming. Instead, look the other direction and say, look how far I've come. Look how much progress I've made. Evaluating your progress is important to encourage yourself to say, the code I wrote today is so much better than the code I wrote 6 months ago. I am embarrassed by the code I wrote 6 months ago. That's a good thing. That's a great thing, because that means you are progressing as a developer. But the other part of this evaluation is figure out, how can I be more efficient in this? What am I doing that's slowing me down? So that when I go back to step 1 and start over in this next cycle, how can I be better at this process? So that you can be even faster in your process. Evaluate your progress, evaluate how you've done, be honest with yourself that, if you tell yourself that, everything's perfect, well, you're wrong. And if you tell yourself everything's horrible, you're also wrong. So figure out how to be honest with yourself, be encouraging to yourself and say, I've made progress, but And then also be honest with, I can make more progress if I do these things. So that's the process. Now, you've been waiting for it. Let's talk through what is the path to C sharp. So let's start from nothing. Okay. We're going to start through this process. And so for some of you who are saying, I want to get better at C sharp, you might find yourself halfway down this list. And that's okay. You pick up where you need to and continue the path. And once you get to C sharp, we're not going to stop there. We're going to go to what happens after you've learned C sharp. But let's start with the path to C sharp. Number one, I want you to learn basic C sharp syntax. This may seem obvious, but I tell you what, it's not. It's not. Because people who come to me and say, I want to become a C sharp developer, they often come with the thing they want to learn first. And it's usually something like ASP.NET Core or WinForms or Blazor. And that's not the place to start. That is absolutely not the place to start. That's like saying, I want to learn to build houses. Okay, so show me how to build a roof. Well, there's a whole lot of things that got to support that roof. And you haven't learned any of them yet. So it doesn't really help you to see how a roof is built because you have no clue the structure that holds that roof up. So start with C sharp syntax. It's not going to be flashy. It's not going to be the coolest thing you've ever done necessarily. Because I would recommend starting in a console application. Learn in a console application because it's the simplest one that gets all that UI stuff out of the way and you focus on the C sharp syntax. Learn about variables. Learn about if statements and do while loops and for and for each and all these other basics of C sharp. Learn how these things work. Learn the foundation, the fundamentals of C sharp before you go any further. Now, again, this is like the foundation of your house. If you do not learn this step cold, as in if you are not rock solid in your understanding of the C sharp syntax basics, well, everything else is built upon those. So if you don't know those, don't move on. Learn the C sharp syntax basics. Next up, right away, learn debugging. Okay, learn debugging. And again, going back to our lies we tell ourselves, don't try to escape. When you find that your code has a bug, it doesn't work the way you expect it to, use that as an opportunity to learn debugging and to practice debugging. You need to practice debugging a lot. So that's why I say learn it early. It's important to understand how to track down bugs, how to identify when things are going wrong, what's going wrong, identifying what steps to take to resolve it or to try things until you do resolve it. It's important to learn how to debug an application. And once you think you've learned it, I want you to practice it from then on. So every chance you get, treat it as an opportunity to practice your debugging, not to ask for help. It's really important. Don't just ask for help to get out of a problem. Learn how to fix it on your own. This is the majority of a developer's job in a development position is going to be tracking down bugs. So why on earth would you not take every opportunity to learn how to do that? If you just ask for help, well, then you're going to lose out on that opportunity and you're going to set yourself back. It's going to make you go slower. Okay, now, so far, I have not talked about the versions of .NET. Okay, when I say C# basics and debugging, we haven't talked about, well, is that .NET 8? Well, the answer is, I want you to learn .NET Framework and .NET 6 and .NET 7 and .NET 8. Because, if you just focus in on the latest and greatest version of .NET, well, that's not going to be the reality of wherever you work, almost certainly. You will deal with older syntax. So learn the spectrum, learn .NET Framework and .NET. And you know what? The C# itself will barely change. It will barely change. So don't get so caught up in, oh, I have to learn .NET 8, and if the tutorial is .NET 6, I can't watch it. No. Okay? Watch it, learn from it, try it out. Put .NET Framework on your computer and learn how to work with it. It's important for today's marketplace. Yes, you may not want to, but you're going to try and open up your net as wide as possible for becoming a C# developer. And the way to do that is to be as skilled as possible in as broad of an area as possible. Adding .NET Framework to your skill set isn't that hard once you've learned C# in general. So adding that is an important step because then you can help companies transition from .NET Framework to .NET 8 or whatever the new .NET version is. So don't focus in on only the latest versions. Okay, so far we have basic C# syntax. We have debugging. Next up, object-oriented programming. That's the focus of C#. C# is all about objects. So learn how they work. Learn how instantiation works. Learn how you can create static classes. Learn how you can, work with properties and work with events and create events and delegates and all these things that are, more advanced. They're more advanced syntax typically. And then you'll get into things that aren't necessarily OOP or object-oriented programming, but are in a similar vein. Like you'll start to see things like async and await and learning how they work and learning how the rest of C# code works together. Because it's really important, again, that you've conquered steps 1, 2, and 3. Because when you start getting into UI project types, like number 4, desktop project types, when you get into these, you're going to all that UI is built on top of object-oriented programming, which is built on top of basic C# syntax. So again, having a rock-solid foundation will help you succeed in the project types as you learn them. And note here that I do say desktop project types. You may say, well, no one uses desktop. Oh, they absolutely do. Business uses desktop project types a lot still. And that isn't necessarily changing that fast because there is definitely a benefit to desktop project types. So again, casting a wide net, understanding that, you can't just pick this super narrow focus and then necessarily find a job as easily. Being able to say, hey, I've got experience in desktop as well as other things is important. So understanding how to build a WPF application, or even more importantly, this may shock you, but even more importantly, WinForms or Windows Forms. Knowing how that project type works, knowing how to create projects in them. You don't have to be an expert, but round out your skill by knowing these things because this will be valuable to a lot of organizations. So, number 5, web project types. Now, you may have said, coming into this list, you may say, hey, I want to be an ASP.NET Core web developer. So I'll skip steps 1 through 4 and go right to 5, right? No, absolutely not. Because web project types are built upon object-oriented programming, which is built upon basic C# syntax. And when you build any project, you're going to need debugging. So it's really important that you do not skip right to step 5. So web project types. Now, what web project types should you learn? Well, I highly recommend Blazor Web Apps. Knowing this project type going forward will be a really important project type to know because it really is kind of the catch-all way for almost every web project going forward. But there are other types you should know. For example, Blazor WebAssembly apps. There's standalone WebAssembly apps for Blazor. This will allow you to do things like progressive web applications. These are important to know. So knowing how to build one will be important. And there are some tricky bits when it comes to offline access and other things. Also, API. Knowing how to build an API is really important because it doesn't matter if you're doing desktop development, web development, mobile development, IoT development, pretty much any of these types of development will benefit from an API. So knowing how to build an API is really important. And there's one more product type that might surprise you, and that's MVC. For a number of years, we had two options with the .NET framework. We had web forms and we had MVC. And so MVC became the way to create a web application in .NET, in the .NET framework. And they moved to .NET Core, and we had other options. We had Blazor Server, Blazor WebAssembly, and Razor Pages, as well as MVC. But because companies were upgrading from .NET Framework to .NET Core, they upgraded their MVC application. They didn't change the type of application, they just upgraded it. So MVC is still a popular web application for .NET even today. So while it is something I would not recommend for new projects in most cases, learning how MVC works will again broaden that net for you and allow you to be more valuable in more situations. So learning MVC as well. So that's Blazor Web Apps primarily, but then Blazor WebAssembly, API, and MVC. Those are the product types that I would encourage you to know in this category. Next up, I would encourage you to learn how to do SQL data access. So this is not necessarily just Microsoft SQL data access. This is any structured query language database. So we're talking Microsoft SQL, SQLite, MySQL, and so on. So learning how to get data into your application and get it back out of your application into the database. Learning how that works is really important, number 6. And you may say, wait, we're missing one here. Don't worry, we're going to get to that. But next up, I highly recommend that you learn NoSQL data access. This is databases like MongoDB or Couchbase or Cosmos DB. These are document databases that are a different way of looking at data access, and they have their pluses and minuses compared to structured query language databases or SQL databases, so also known as relational databases. So learning both types will be important, again, to broaden that net. And number 8, API consumption. So learning how to have an API provided to you and get information out of it and put information back in. Learning how to work with API is really important when you are learning C#. Now, again, you may have looked at point 4 and point 5 and said, Tim, you missed one big broad category of project types, and that is mobile project types. So you're not mentioning .NET MAUI here, or Avalonia, or Uno. And yes, I'm not. Because on a path to learning C#, that is definitely later on. Learning C# and learning how to have a broad net in C# really doesn't include mobile yet, because mobile is one of the more complicated things that you can learn. And so it's not for just starting out. It's not for when you are trying to fill in your C# knowledge and become a C# developer. So at this point, at point number 8, you should be qualified to get a junior C# developer job. So if you go through this list, and if you practice this list, and if you are skilled in this, if you have really worked hard to be not just watching, but actually implementing what you learn, then you should be at least the junior developer level of skill because you have that much work put into it. This is a long process. This is not a 1 week or a 1 month process. This is months of work. So don't think, learn C# in 28 days or 10 days or, no. You got to put a lot of work in here. I recommend 6 months to a year in just these 8 steps. So it takes a lot of time. And part of it is you need to pace yourself. Don't try and do 16 hours a day. Don't try and do 8 hours a day. That's a lot. You need to work on, and there may be a time for that. There may be a time where you say, no, you know what, Tim, I need a job. I'm out of work. I have the time. I'm going to spend the time. Okay, that may be the right choice for you. But in general, if you can space this out, it will actually be better for you. It will help you learn this in a way that sticks better if you spend smaller chunks of time over a longer period of time rather than trying to crunch it all into a short amount of time. So that's the path to learning C#, but there is a path after C#. So after you've conquered that, after you're kind of, starting to get job ready, after you start that process, well, there are still things that you haven't necessarily learned yet that you need to fill in. So some things that maybe you come across, maybe even you've used some of these, but you haven't done them all or done in this order. So the very next thing you should learn is Git or source control in general, but Git is the one to learn. So learn source control with Git. Learn how it works, learn the syntax, learn how to interact with it. Do not avoid this. This is very important for business. This is very important for being a solid developer. So not knowing source control really is a major minus when it comes to developers. So understanding how this works is important. Number 2, learn Microsoft SQL Server. Learn how to build databases, learn how to construct them, learn how they work. Learn how to create tables and how to create T-SQL statements that can do the full CRUD actions, the create, read, update, and delete data out of those tables. Learn what store procedures are. Learn how to call that. You should already know, but learn how to call that from C# and put data in and out. Learn how to build a good database. Learn how to make sure that you optimize your calls, optimize your T-SQL so that it's doing things efficiently. A big mistake is not understanding how a database works, specifically Microsoft SQL when you're learning C#, because that's a thing that goes with C# quite a bit. So again, you're widening your net. Number 3, HTML and CSS. And this is one that people often tell me, oh, I learned that in a weekend. Oh, I learned that real quick. Guess what? No. That's a mistake. You need to spend time learning modern HTML and modern CSS. Just understanding, okay, it's H1 through H6 and divs and paragraph tags, that's not enough. In fact, that's going to actively hurt you as a front-end developer. Now, not everybody's going to interact with web applications, but a big number of you are. And again, you want to widen your skill net. So understand how to build modern HTML5 and CSS3 content. Learn about Flex and Grid and accessibility and SEO. If you say that centering a div is hard, then you haven't learned modern HTML and CSS, because it's not. You've got multiple options to do that easily in modern HTML and CSS. So learn how that works and practice it. Build web pages, build web applications, learn how to do this. Number 4, learn Docker. Learn Docker. And some people say, well, Tim, I'm not going to create microservices. This is not about microservices. In fact, this is not even about production necessarily. Now, you can use and you may use Docker in production to create a container and containerize your application and send it up to production. You may, but that's not what this is about. If you learn Docker, it will make you faster as a developer, because knowing how to use Docker will allow you to create things very quickly and easily for local development. SQL Server, MongoDB, Redis, etc. You can just create these things in a matter of seconds, have them up and running, test something, and tear them back down. So knowing how to do this is really important. Understand how to use Docker for your local development setup. Know how to create a development environment very, very quickly using Docker. That way, you can test things locally in a much more real world type focus. And by having it more real world, you can find more problems and be able to create a more rock solid application before it gets into production and you have bugs. So understand how Docker works. All right, number 5, Azure. Learn Azure. Now, some of you say, well, Tim, AWS is bigger. And it absolutely is. Amazon Web Services is bigger than Azure. I would recommend you learn Azure. Now, why would I recommend you learn the number 2 cloud service in the marketplace instead of the number 1? Well, for a couple of reasons. One, Azure really easily integrates with everything C#. Okay, that's one, but that's not the important one. The important one is Azure is absolutely safer for new learners. How often have you heard the story of, I was trying something out and I forgot to delete something, forgot to turn something off, and my cloud bill was $1,000. I didn't even realize. I also get a bill for $1,000 or $5,000 or $50,000 in cloud services. I don't want that for you. Azure is a safer environment for new learners. It makes it easier to make sure you don't overspend. There's a ton of free content you can use, free for life. And resource groups, oh my goodness, resource groups are the number 1 feature of Azure, especially for new users, because resource groups allow you to, at the end of your testing, delete the resource group, which is free. Resource groups are free. It's just a name. But if you delete the resource group, you will ensure that you deleted every resource that you created under that group. That means that even if you didn't know that by creating this one service, it would create a support service, maybe a storage, container or something like that it created kind of for you. Well, maybe you didn't know that was going to happen. But if you delete the resource group, it will delete that storage container as well as your other testing items. So learn Azure. Even if you want to eventually use AWS, that's fine. Use AWS, that's cool. But learn Azure first. It's safer for you. It's safer for new learners, and it's going to help you get up to speed quicker with cloud resources. And then number 6, JavaScript. Learn JavaScript after all this stuff. Okay. I would put JavaScript at number 6 because as a C# developer, just taking on more things isn't helpful. So as a web developer, I recommend that you first learn C#, learn it really well before you even start on web. But then you need to learn HTML and CSS because you're going to have that in order to integrate C# code. Cool. You've learned all that, but now you've got, HTML and CSS and C# and the Razor syntax, and that's already a bunch of stuff. Trying to add JavaScript, and my goodness, trying to add JavaScript with Angular, React, or Vue, which would then add NPM and ESLint and a whole bunch of other things you probably want to add. That's a lot of complexity that's going to slow you down, slow your learning down. So wait to learn JavaScript. You can do a lot without JavaScript because of Blazor. But then I don't recommend you not learn JavaScript. Learn it, but just learn it in this order. So you get to number 6, learn vanilla JavaScript. Don't focus on frameworks first. Please learn how JavaScript works first. That will help you immensely. Frameworks come and go. And you may say, well, no, React's going to be here forever. It's not. But we said it before about Angular, which was actually it's now Angular.js because Angular 2 replaced Angular. Now it's just Angular. But we said about Vue, and Vue came in and it's kind of seemed like it's going a little bit. These things come and go because there's now a new thing. There's now there's something else. There's Next.js or something else coming down the road. So learn vanilla JavaScript because what they all have in common is they're built upon JavaScript. So learn the foundation before you learn to put on a roof. Learn JavaScript. So these are the 6 technologies I recommend you learn after you learn C#. Now, after this probably comes mobile development if you want to go that way. But I recommend you learn these things first, because even if you do mobile development, you definitely want to have Git. You probably want to have SQL. You probably want to have HTML and CSS. You probably should have Docker and Azure. And you know what? You might even need JavaScript. So I recommend you learn these things first before you tackle mobile. So learn these things. They're really important for almost every C# developer, that you have these 6 things. Now, can you be a C# developer without these things? Absolutely. There have been people that didn't get past point number 3 on my previous list of learning C#. They don't know object-oriented programming even. They just know basic C# syntax and they've become developers. But the reality is, if you want to become a modern C# developer, and if you want to keep your net as wide as possible so that when jobs come up, you don't go, well, I'm qualified for 2 out of 5 things. So if you want to be as qualified as possible as a C# developer, learn the path to C# and learn the path after C#. So the path to C# will get you to getting a job. And you can get a job with just the path of C#. But once you've got the job, or once you're solid in that path of C#, work this path too. This will help you set yourself apart. And the deeper you go in these areas, the better. So if you are a rock solid C# developer who really knows how to build a SQL database and knows how to work with source control and knows how to work even with just Docker, well, guess what? You are going to be in demand. If you add the fact that you are a great HTML5 and CSS3 modern web developer on top of that, oh my goodness, you have skills that you can market. So the more you add to this, the better. Now, if you say, hey, I've seen SQL and I've written an H1 tag and a div tag, so I know HTML, and I ran this one Docker command once, so I know Docker. That's not going to be good enough. You need to have some depth to those skills. But these are the areas to go deep in next. Now, people always ask me, Tim, do you have training on all these things? And there's a lot of training that I do have on all of these things on this YouTube channel. So this YouTube channel has over 600 videos, primarily on C#, but I have videos on Git and SQL and HTML and CSS and Bootstrap and Docker and Azure and JavaScript. I have lots of content on this channel. But I also have a paid side as well, where I do paid courses. And so I'm going to walk you through, if you have, this is most helpful if you have the All Access Pass, because the All Access Pass gives you access to all my public courses. It gives you access to all of them, so you can just kind of pick and choose and take your path and just go through it. So let's go through the paid path. So if you either want to buy the courses one by one, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, or if you want to go through the All Access Pass, which I do recommend because it's cheaper, you can go through this path by just renting my courses, essentially, with the All Access Pass. So number 1, the C# Master Course. This is a course that will go through the entire process of becoming a C# developer. By the time you leave that course, if you have done what I asked and practiced what you have seen and tried things out, I gave you some practice examples, but I asked you to do more. And I also give you 2 full applications that you built. Now, again, they're not real world applications in the fact that I wouldn't publish them then because they're incomplete. That doesn't matter. We put pieces together and we figure out how they work and how they interact together. We take what we've learned so far and we build an application so you can see how those things interact. We build 2 of those. And I even do career advice in this course. And this course covers .NET Framework and .NET Core and .NET 6 and it will cover .NET 8 soon. So it covers the entire breadth as well. So this course, by the time you're done, if you follow along and done the things I ask you to, you should be at least the junior developer level of C# understanding, if not even maybe a mid-level developer, again, depending on how you practiced. So that's number one. Number two, Git from start to finish. I have a course on Git. I have an Accelerate course on Microsoft SQL Server. And that's on becoming a Microsoft SQL developer. So again, how to build a database, how to set up SQL, how to do the full CRUD actions, how to work with views and stored procedures, how to optimize your T-SQL, and more. So that course is designed to learn Microsoft SQL in a weekend. So it's designed to be very quick and get you started with the 80% you need to work with databases on the Microsoft SQL side. Number 4, Web Development Master Course. This is a massive course, just like number 1. And as a web developer, it's designed to take you from knowing nothing to being able to build web pages in production, to being able to be a web developer. So this is going to take you through HTML5 and CSS3, both the basics and advanced stuff. It's going to take you through JavaScript, the basics and the more advanced stuff. We're going to build 2 different full websites and see how they interact. We're going to learn about accessibility and SEO and so many other things that you need. Even if you're a C# web developer, you need this course because it's important to learn modern web development. Number 5, Blazor from start to finish. This is a course I just completed in November. This is a .NET 8 Blazor course. It's built all with .NET 8. It's about building Blazor web apps. Just Blazor web apps, which of course means server-side rendered apps or SSR apps. It means stream rendering. It means Blazor server and Blazor WebAssembly and the auto, which switches from server to WebAssembly, and how they all work and their authentication and the whole breadth of Blazor. It's going to be really important if you want to do web development with C# and you want to have those skills. Again, widening your skill set. Even if you're like, I'm not sure if I want to do web development or not, knowing how web development works, even if you want to be a back-end developer, will be important. Okay, number 6, Docker from start to finish. This is going to cover how Docker works so that you will understand how to work with Docker, how to use Docker and utilize Docker to really accelerate your ability to do that local development. And then also you can capture apps and deploy them as containers if you decide that you want to do that. Again, broadening that net. And finally, number 7, Azure from start to finish. This covers how I work with the cloud, how I do so safely, how I do so without spending a lot of money. How do I work with the various services? So we cover a lot of Azure stuff, and we talk about how to be, frugal with our money at every step. So many people say the cloud is so expensive, and it absolutely can be, but it can also be really cheap, and really cheap in production. Because I want to go kind of above and beyond, I spend $9 a month to host IamTimCorey.com. And that's now a globally replicated website that is wherever you ask for on the web, it's as close as it can be to your location in order to speed up access time. And that's global replication and the fact that it has a rock solid uptime and all the rest that comes from Azure. And I spend practically nothing. I could spend nothing. I could spend $0 and have that still happen. So understanding how Azure works can really save you a lot of money, and it can allow you to do a lot of testing as well for free. In this course, we do some expensive stuff. We do some really expensive stuff to try stuff out and practice stuff. And even if I didn't have the free credit that comes with sign up for a new account with Azure, even if I didn't have that, I would have spent $5 on this entire course. So all the time I left that stuff running overnight or all the rest, $5. $5. Because I teach you how to be wise with what you do in the cloud. There's ways to waste money and there's ways to do it right. And so I teach you that. That way you're protected and able to, do so in a way that is practical, because if you don't want to spend hundreds of dollars in testing. So that's the 7 courses I recommend. Again, this is something where I would recommend using the All Access Pass for this. If I do the math right, I believe this is over $1,400 worth of courses in just these 7 courses, and you can absolutely buy them. I'm not going to tell you no to buying courses because you do get lifetime access, but the All Access Pass is $500 for a year or $50 a month. Now it's going to change at some point in the near future. Right now, the All Access Pass monthly is open. So if you want to get in on that before it closes, that'd be great. Because once it closes, it doesn't open again until we're hoping to open it full time. But people had abused that. They jump in, they illegally download a whole course and then cancel. That wasn't real great for anybody because the whole point of the paid course is to fund the free content. So if people are, ripping that off, well, then less people get free content. So what we're going to do is we are going to open it up full time. That's our goal. But we're going to have to raise the rate some. And then if you stay in for a little while, it drops the rate back down. But if you're an All Access Pass monthly or annual person right now, and you stay in it and the rates go up, your rates won't go up. Okay, we're going to keep your rates at that low rate. It will probably be lower than even the over time reduced rate. So just know you'll get the best possible deal right now. But no matter what, we're going to try and keep the rates low so that as many people as possible can get in, but still at the same time, keep it high enough to be able to fund more of the free content. So that's the paid path. You do not have to do the paid path. This is not one of those things where, here's all the things you could do, but really you need to do it the paid way. No, you could absolutely do the free way. I did. I learned all this stuff on my own. So you can too. And I have given you the path to do so. I've shown you the steps. Now you just have to go and figure out all the content to fill in those steps. You have to do some of the hard work. But again, remember, it's about doing things that others won't. It's about pushing through when others give up. So if you do the hard work, you'll see more rewards than if you just bow out because it gets too hard. So doing this on your own is absolutely a great way to go. But if you want the faster way, the paid way, if you can afford it, well, then here is the order that it would take. Okay, so that's the path to C# in 2024. I hope this helped. I hope this gives you kind of an overview of what steps to take, and I hope it encourages you along your way. Don't forget those lies. Make sure you write those lies down and make sure that you're not telling yourself those lies. They will come up over and over in your career, and they will slow you down every time you start to believe them. Okay, so get on this path, and I can't wait to see what you do in 2024. Thanks for watching, and as always, I am Tim Corey.